On November 30th, the IDF has struck a vehicle in Gaza. They've announced it. They've said they struck the vehicle because they suspected, or they knew, they had confirmed that in that vehicle was a person, a terrorist who participated in October 7th. Something they've also realized, or sort of had information on, is that he was a worker for the World Central Kitchen. We talked about World Central Kitchen before. This is not the first time IDF, I guess, has killed World Central Kitchen employees. There are a few differences between those two actions, so we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the response from the World Central Kitchen, and also I think there are a lot of similarities between those two strikes, or a lot of points that have to be made. Joining me today is Marco and Richard. Welcome to the Daily Objective, and uh, well, let me start with you. What do you guys think? Marco, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that if you run an operation in a war zone, chances are you're going to be hit by some fire. And unlike the previous incident, this actually was a targeted attack. It wasn't an accident like in the previous one, but clearly the IDF had intelligence that there was somebody who took part to October the 7th. Um, and they went for it. They say they had good intelligence on his movement, good reliable intelligence, so they rightly hit the guy. And the fact he was working for the War Central Kitchen is no here nor there, really. He was a terrorist and deserves to get what he got. And frankly, the people who worked with him could have bothered to do some sort of due diligence before they rely on locals, if they weren't locals themselves. So yeah, it's always sad when you have a loss of life, but frankly, if a terrorist is involved, well,
It's not so sad in that case, then, is it? No, for sure. And it's deserved by the sound of it, from all the information that IDF have released so far. Now, they've also put the onus on World Central Kitchen to explain why he was working for them and why they're not doing their due diligence, if you like, in order to ensure that they're not going to have this kind of crossover, which will put their own staff at risk. Now, this was an unmarked vehicle we're talking about, and it was not doing a food run, if you like, or according to the reports. But obviously they've been tracking him closely, and the key fact was that they got information that he'd been involved in October the 7th, and that is the element that you're punishing, isn't it? Two things can be true at the same time. They're not necessarily contradictory. A guy can be a terrorist on October the 7th and also work for an organization like this, whether that's as a cover or whether it's as a means of supplying food to people, particularly since the aim of the supplying of food is to supply the Palestinian people and keep Hamas going and the Palestinian people going anyway. They're not actually in conflict, are they? They're all towards the same goal in any event. Towards so helping the Palestinians survive in order to kill Jews, if you look at the full picture. So therefore, you've got to examine both things possibly being true. But of course, it's very much like when people describe a school being bombed by the Israelis, for example. You keep the word school, but you drop the fact that there aren't any kids there, that it's being used as a command and control center by Hamas, that it's full of weapons and propaganda, and yet even if it still has the word school on the front of the building, that becomes all that's retained, and that becomes how the argument and the piece describing it is always framed. In the same way that here it would be described and framed as an aid worker killed. A humanitarian, whatever phrase you want to put on it, and dropping the context of the other activities, which are the key activities for which he's being targeted.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, IDF claims he has participated in October 7. I'll go to the actual statement. We won't read the whole thing. But also, there is something Something to remember about October 7. I don't think basically IDF claims he is part of Hamas or part of, let's say, Al-Qassam brigades or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But it's important to remember on October 7, it wasn't just Hamas. It wasn't just, terrorist organization. It was also pretty much just your average Palestinian, your sort of your civilians basically just going through the border and joining Hamas or basically doing atrocities of their own. So uh, he could have been the worker or as you said, these two things are not going against each other. And I want to discuss one point a bit later, but sort of going to the actual statement from the IDF, I'll just read some parts of it. So this was yesterday. Earlier today, the IDF struck a vehicle with a terrorist, Hazmi Kadi, who took part in invading kibbutz near Oz during the October 7 massacre. Kadih was monitored by IDF intelligence for a while and was struck following credible information regarding his real-time location. Something they have mentioned later, which I think it's good to point out, is that they have also said, we emphasize that according to current information, it is not possible to link the terrorist to a specific abduction attempt. I've seen some people on X already connecting this person to some actual abductions. I haven't seen anything yet from any confirmation yet from the IDF. So it might be true. We might find out about it later, but I don't think that suddenly like changes it that much. I mean, just if you basically what Hamas did, declare war on the nation, if you participate in that attack, that completely disqualifies you. I mean, from life. Honestly, I mean, once you join, then there is no going back. And if if you also on top of that kidnap Israeli civilian or an IDF person, that doesn't make that big of a difference to me. Maybe let's also cover the World Central Kitchen response. Again, I'll just read a part of it. World Central Kitchen. So first they said they are heartbroken to share that the vehicle carrying World Central Kitchen colleagues, as Richard, you mentioned, that wasn't an actual like World Central Kitchen like vehicle officially. It wasn't marked, so it was just a normal car. World Central Kitchen had no knowledge that any individual in the vehicle had alleged ties to the October 7th Hamas attack. World Central Kitchen is pausing operation in Gaza at this time. So yeah, this is also basically they are pausing their operations again. Marco, what do you think about that? They didn't know. They didn't know this person was part of it. Maybe we can, if you want, we can go through. Eitan Fischberger had a great investigative journalist. We had him on. He has some things he found out about him. But do you want to comment on anything before, or should we go to that?
Well, as usual, these organizations, they never know anything when it comes to finding a terrorist in the mist, do they? They are heartbroken that somebody died, but they don't seem heartbroken that the hostages have been held for a year now, and we still have nearly 100 hostages in Gaza held by the very people they're helping. So if it were for me, if I were in charge of the IDF or in the government of Israel, I would stop a single grain of rice entering Gaza until every single hostage has been returned. So that should be a no-brainer. But no, Israel is the only country fighting a war who needs to feed his enemies. The situation is just preposterous, frankly. These people clearly are not suffering enough in order to reject Hamas and return the hostages. And despite this, all this organization puns about, if you look at the actually website, the War Central Kitchen website, every single member of staff seems to be a director or something. So they are on very good money. Good for them, if they get private funds, that's fine. If they're paid by the taxpayer, a bit less fine. But the issue is not that they're all office workers and they're not really engaged on the ground, but the fact that the people that engage on the ground are never really properly vetted. And you said earlier on, he wasn't a member of Hamas and they have made a connection. Well, just the fact you're a Gazan, I mean, being a Hamas is not like joining a country club or a golf club. It's in the culture of these people. That's why they did what they did, and that's why they promised to do it again, and that's why the hostages are still there, held mostly by civilians, people who have no more jobs and who even work for, we've seen UNRWA and uh, probably Palestinian World Central Kitchen. So, you know, it's very hard to feel sorry about these people who directly intervene in the self-defense of Israel, by feeding effectively the enemy of Israel. And then, yeah, something happens like this, and am I supposed to feel sorry for you?
And just to follow up on what Marco said there about not letting a grain in, I want to emphasize the point here, because it's until you release the hostages, because people will comment on starvation and tactics and war crimes and stuff, and then they'll always drop the releasing the hostages. The ability to release the hostages is entirely within the Hamas Palestinian people's hands. And to claim that it isn't is to ignore the fact that both partook in October the 7th. And that's another element that is repeatedly dropped from any analysis by people such as World Central Kitchen. When they're talking about it, they will never acknowledge the fact that ordinary Palestinians also partook in October the 7th. And until that fact is recognized, and there's video evidence, there's plenty of evidence of that taking place on the day itself. And of course, speaking wider than this particular organization, there are so many, of course, that even with the GoPro footage of the Hamas terrorists themselves, still will refuse to see the evidence of their own eyes from the source, because they don't wish to believe that the crimes took place that were documented live and streamed hideously to the world at the time. And then you're expected to follow their moral position subsequently. Well, absolutely not. So I think that's but a vital point. But I think the idea that this organizations such as the World Central Kitchen are willfully, intentionally ignorant because it suits them, because I can't see because I keep covering my own eyes. That's the MO here. That's what allows them to hire people that they can then claim afterwards they know nothing about, even to the extent that that's true. And of course, we don't know the detail of what they knew or what their vetting procedures are at this stage. But it's pretty obvious that if you're going to be recruiting in such a place, there's a high chance you're going to be picking up and giving work to, funding to the kind of people that partook in October the 7th. And unless you're completely thorough in that, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen, and it's going to impact on other people who assist in such food operations who may be completely innocent, but of course they will be the necessary collateral to ensure that October the 7th perpetrators are punished and that there are no subsequent ones, which is the point.
Yeah, in a bit I'll go into why I think it is really like a fundamental issue why World Central Kitchen sort of hires people like him, and I think it's real interesting. I'm sort of like teasing out I'll reveal it at the end, but I want to go to the actual person who got killed. So as IDF said in their statement, it's Hazmi Kadi. As I mentioned, Aitan Fishberger found his Facebook page. You can in the description you can find his Twitter or X, formerly Twitter, thread when he talked about it, when he found, it's always, never ask Palestinian what they tweeted on October 7th. But if you go to his Facebook, the name he has there is Ahed Azmi Kadi. I was trying to find if what's the difference with the names, and I've realized I have this almost every single time, and it's just an issue with basically those people are the same person, as far as I'm aware. Basically with Arabic names, the way it works, and I think it's similar with Hebrew names, it's really hard to like translate them directly. So oftentimes you might have like different organizations might have, if they have it in English, they might have a different translation. But even if you look at like reports and how different news articles are reporting on it, they use pretty much either name interchangeably. So it is the same person, and you can go through everything he has posted. But just on October 7th, he said, "Oh Allah, decree all goodness for Gaza and make this day a day of goodness, peace, safety. All Allah, protect, protect." And on October 7th, he said, October 8th, sorry, those who went in and did not return are the guardians of Allah's book, chosen from among the elite, carefully selected from the most loyal and sincere, and those with great strength and determination. And it goes on and on. And, you know, uh, I wanted to say, you cannot be targeted just because of your speech. But on the other hand, this is a state of war. This is someone pretty much openly speaking out for Hamas, openly speaking out for October 7th, supporting it. But he wasn't killed because of this. He was because IDF believes they have direct evidence that he did partake in October 7th. But even going on their social media, you often find out like this is what they actually stand for. This is public page. You can go to his Facebook page. I was surprised that I can just find it. It's not even blocked. It's not even privated. Well, I guess he cannot do it now, and it usually takes Facebook a little bit to take it out. But yeah, this is what it is. This is what he stands for. I mean, again, it's no great loss. Marco?
Oh yeah, it's so surprising, isn't it? All these people, even the UNRWA workers, they're not hiding. They are in plain sight. Just that people who employed them, know very well what they're up to, and most of the time they don't even bother looking because they don't want to risk finding, that they're actually terrorists. Um, but these people, I mean, this guy on Facebook wasn't making those statements just to exercise his freedom of speech. He was making this statement because he's a terrorist, because he believes that Jews shouldn't exist. He believes Israel shouldn't exist as a state, and that reflects exactly what the whole so-called Palestinian culture thinks. They exist in order to wipe out Israel. No Muslim country in the area believe Israel should be there. Yes, there are some movement towards some sort of understanding, for example, with the Abraham Accords and stuff like that. But if you actually let them implement what they want, Israel won't last a week. Israel is the problem from their point of view. That's why the fanciful hope that two-state solution might get anyway is just ludicrous, because these people do not want a two-state solution. They want one-state solution where the state is actually caliphate and there's no Israel at all. So thankfully, Allah wasn't protecting very well in this occasion, and we got rid of another terrorist.
Yeah, and just quickly to build on the point how much Israel is hated in the region. Even with something like Abraham Accords, you have to realize the nations that are the Arabic nations that are sided are the ones who are the most further from Israel. Like it's Morocco, Sudan, and United Arab Emirates. Literally the three nations that you almost couldn't be further away from Israel, at least in like sort of like the general region.
Well,
Uh,
Yemen is fairly far away, but the Houthis managed to find a way to throw ballistic missiles at them all the time. Even recently, one was stopped. So,
Well, when there's hate, there's way, or something like that. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, through these kind of posts on Facebook, he's showing his full character, isn't he? He's showing his full self, to be honest, and he's showing that he improves both of the intent and the method behind October the 7th, and the fact that he also puts those posts on October the 8th after the events have been broadcast across the world and completely obvious what has actually happened. You can also no longer claim ignorance about what did happen either. So it's not like you can assume that, oh, I only thought people were going to go across the border and, I don't know, serve the Jews subpoenas or something. No, you knew what they were going to do. You knew what they did do, and you knew what the outcome was, and you still support it, and you still are on the absolute side of the Islamism that is behind it. Yeah, it's all there in black and white, and yet, of course, you can then show another face. At the same time, you can show your ID card for World Central Kitchen with its halo of altruism, protecting you from any criticism whatsoever, and that, of course, is to ignore the rest of it, and of course to ignore how much the actual work of the people like the World Central Kitchen is doing to prolong such a crisis in the first place, and not for the benefit of anyone, including the Palestinian people ultimately. So yeah, and it's also not a surprise that I don't know whether it's a simple translation thing, as you say, from Arabic to have more than one name. It's certainly the case even in Western countries like the UK, when you have terrorist incidents from Islamists or Muslims, that they often have multiple different aliases, far more than just a translation style alias. And some of that is to present different faces to different parts of the world, or different groups of friends or groups of organizations, as and when it suits, in order to manipulate the system. So whether that's the case or not here, it's hard to say based on the information, but it certainly wouldn't be uncommon.
And it comes very handy if you're claiming welfare benefits. You having different names, helps you claiming more than you should. So, and it actually happens. There are cases where benefit fraud has been found out, people using different names. So,
and the sheer laxity of the system in terms of analyzing, the addresses and stuff is proof of that.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Another super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And another super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much again. He in his last super chat, he says, missed Marco and Richard in Cali. Well, I guess he didn't miss me.
No, we will been there, but yes, yeah.
I'm joking, of course. But sort of going to I think the most important part. So the World Central Kitchen have claimed that they are taking hiring seriously. And when I was looking at their, I think I looked at their X and their Instagram, they have a bunch of stories also from Ukraine. They are actively helping in Ukraine. And something sort of rubbed me the wrong way. Like I was thinking about it, like what's the difference? How is that different? And I realized, the fundamental issue is that Palestinians are the enemy. That Gaza, Hamas, is an enemy territory. I mean, if if there was it wouldn't be unbelievable to imagine that a Ukrainian soldier or someone who used to be in the Ukrainian army and then went home or something like that is now working for the World Central Kitchen in Ukraine. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that. There wouldn't be anything wrong with World Central Kitchen providing aid for the Ukrainians. It's because Ukrainian is in simple terms, the good guy here. Ukraine is the one who has been unfairly attacked and is trying to defend it. It's trying to defend the rights of their own people. It's trying to defend itself against aggressor. When it comes to Israel and Gaza, Israel is the one that has been attacked. Israeli citizens are the ones who are being threatened by Hamas, by World Central Kitchen helping the Palestinians, by sort of hiring locally, or which again, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with hiring locally, but the fact is you are actively an enemy population. You are actively prolonging this war. You are actively like helping the enemy, and that's the fundamental difference. I mean, if World Central Kitchen was helping, Russians in Kursk, there will be a similar thing. They are actively helping the enemy. They are supporting the sort of the wrong side. So I think that's the fundamental problem, is that it is accepted that Israel should provide the aid to its enemy. Israel should provide food and whatever other humanitarian aid to their enemies, which makes this into this prolonged conflict that pretty much can never end, because when you have to actively support the people who are trying to destroy you, when does it end? When can you end this conflict? When whenever you would want to end, they just have more resources because you are providing them. And as long as you exist, they'll have the resources. Marco?
That's part of the problem, isn't it? That's why altruism is not benevolence. benevolence is going to the people hit in Spain with the floods and providing help there, which WCK did. They aided people hit by the floods. But at the same time, they apply the scandal do-goodism to everyone. They see somebody in need, therefore they assume, oh, I have to help them. Partially because it helps them to rake in more donations, and partly because they do not care about who they're actually helping. They have to step in when somebody is in need. Whether somebody is in need is a Nazi or is somebody who actually starving, it's a different issue. But they don't look at that, and that's part of the problem. That's the exactly why altruism is wrong in its own structure, where the need of somebody else is the standard of value, really. And that's in a way what Israel is doing as well. The need of the Palestinian is more than the need of the hostages. Sacrifices his own people, his own citizens, whether soldiers or civilians, because it doesn't want to harm the Palestinian, doesn't want them to shed a few kilos, a few stones, and starve them until they return, until they surrender, until they change their ways. And that's part of the problem.
I just wanted to say a few words about how I've read how this story's been covered, particularly by organisations like the BBC. Because of course you start off with your great big headline, which talks about aid workers being killed. You got your accompanying big photos showing the wreck of the vehicle itself, photographed from as many angles as possible, plus getting the World Central logo in there wherever you can, even if it's not on the vehicle itself. And then, of course, you talk within the article all about the good work which World Central Kitchen does. You're polishing that halo of altruism all the time. And then the article that I read concluded on talking about the previous incident that we mentioned earlier on in the show, and suggests that the IDF had admitted a grave error, and in the previous incident, and they make it sound, by ending on the sentence about that, as if that's going to be the inevitable outcome. And this one, they're basically wagging their finger at you and saying, oh, just you wait a couple of weeks and this will be exactly the same case. That's the assumption that's being fed to you. So all of it being designed to lead you towards a certain argument, whether you take it at face value or read through the whole article.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was specifically the IDF or the prime minister or just some Israeli spokesperson, but yeah, that was a story we commented on, because Israel came out and said there was a grave mistake, and yeah, paraphrasing to but something among that lines, and yeah, we've talked about it, how no, the grave mistake was allowing these people to be here. I mean, the people who died in I believe it was in April strike, I think they were foreign nationals, all of them. So to that extent, it is really sad that those people died. But you have to realize, like, these people had no business being there. They are actively aiding the enemy, even if they don't view it as that way, which they probably didn't. But that's what you have to realize when you're in active war zone, when you are in the war conflict, when Israel is trying to defend their own people. They cannot sacrifice their own people for a nation or an entity that has decided to attack them. We also have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Jonathan. He says, missed you too, Daniel. Well, I'm glad I begged myself another super chat. But yeah, so sort of just wrapping this story. I mean, it is fundamental. It's always the same issue. Like, these humanitarian organizations, for all good they do, for example, in Ukraine or other regions where the people are actually innocent there, and the people do deserve any help they can get. They fundamentally, they break their own trust, they break their own legitimacy by being involved in areas like this, when they are doing the opposite of helping the people. They are actively harming. They are actively harming them. We also have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, I do not trust World Kitchen. I mean, yeah, that's what you get. It's similar to when we talk about ICJ or ICC. We not we, but generally in the West, they were praised when they put out a arrest warrant against Putin or against any dictators or against any other dictators and tyrants. But when you put it out against Netanyahu, then yeah, it's like people don't even care about the Putin arrest warrant. I mean, if it literally has pretty much no justification or pretty much anyone can be, then yeah, it has very little value. And when you have World Central Kitchen helping anyone, even uh, like entities like Hamas, then yeah, it's what is the point? They completely lose any moral value they have gained from helping people like the Ukrainians. Um, Anything to finish this on, Marco?
Well, no, just mention that really it's up to Israel to stop these people from operating within a war zone. They're really in the way. I mean, because Israel is effectively dragging this thing by being too concerned about the Palestinian civilians. These incidents do happen, especially as you mentioned, when you got somebody in a war zone. Unfortunately, accident happens. Especially this one is not an accident. This one is hitting a target. But yeah, frankly, as I mentioned earlier on, Israel shouldn't allow this kind of organization in at all. Stop UNRWA operating in its own territory. Good for that. They actually stopped providing some relief because the aid convoys are being attacked by the Gazans. But the point is that if Israel has stopped this kind of supply to their enemies, you could even argue, well, we're doing for the welfare of the agency they operate in. They're going to be attacked by international community anyway, so you might well go down the route that suits you better rather than getting flack anyway.
And I'll just add, there should be no aid at all to hostage takers, to their facilitators, to their co-conspirators, to their, that should be the rule. Simple rule. If you're that desperate for food, you hand back the people whose lives you snatched on October the 7th.
And so we'll continue on the reality show Extra. Not with this topic. We're gonna talk about I don't know if happier topic. We're going to talk about the right to die. Basically, in UK, or I think the law, from what I've read specifically, would apply only in England and Wales. But there is this new law, or rather a bill, that has been approved. It's still going to go through some changes, but basically it would legalize, or it would allow for people, I think specifically with terminal illness, to go through an assisted suicide, basically. So they would be able to um, basically legally commit suicide, if you want to put it in that way, sort of sanctioned by the state, as in they would. That is like a legal now way to do it in a sense. Although we'll talk about more of that on the reality show Extra. Let's not talk about it here. That's for ARCUK members, website members who can join on the Zoom call. You have the Zoom link in WhatsApp, and also our YouTube members. The link for that is in the chat. So make sure to join us there in just about a minute or so. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you guys for joining me, and bye bye.